Another thing I hear a lot of companies talking about is, well, if things get really bad, we'll just hit the eject button and we'll run a process and we'll exit. We'll find a strategic buyer or a financial buyer that will acquire us. And obviously the finance team plays a really important role in any kind of strategic process like that. Tim, one of the things that you and I've talked about a number of times is just the importance of, the having clean books and, accurate financial statements that all tie together. How does that influence valuation? How does that help you in terms of potential acquisition?
Yeah, it's a great question, Steve. When you talk about SaaS metrics and valuation and ARR, there's a lot of these things that are all dependent on each other. And so from my, just gut check of what I see the market is a lot of VCs and private equity firms and financial buyers or strategic buyers tend to place a heavy weight on valuing off of ARR. And a lot of that is just used in the marketplace nowadays. Now, to assess the quality of that ARR, they leverage the SaaS metrics that you're presenting. And so by using those SaaS metrics, they build up to saying, hey, during this downturn, you've really managed your churn very well. So we're super impressed by you. Or, wow, you haven't lost any customers and your net dollar retention is going up. So you found something during this downturn that really kind of got people excited. Those types of things really help boost your valuation. Now, in order to tell that story to any investor or potential buyer to talk through this whole planning process, not only do you need to do all that work, but you need to make sure that that is clean data. And the reason I bring that up is as you're going through diligence on either a purchase or an investment or whatever exit or backup plan that you're doing, if you can't cleanly articulate and explain, hey, here's the invoice, here's the deferred revenue, and here's the recognized revenue that all corresponds and ticks and ties to the ARR, then investors, one, will lose confidence in you, and two, take away precious time, as Andy indicated, that you don't necessarily have on getting that together. And so, Steve, going back to the poll that you had, saying if folks are looking to fundraise in 2023, well, there's operational things you can do today in terms of sales and marketing and building out the funnel and doing cyclical work like that. But if you're coming up in the next couple of months, if not, 9 months, then really it all falls onto finance to, one, clean everything, and two, be able to understand and present the story articulately. So prior to signing LOI, vendors like Ordway, who can organize, clean, and get all the data going properly, that's going to be critical in this process because investors will take longer, and no, they can take longer, to go through the diligence process and potentially put you in a very difficult spot down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that a lot of companies are underestimating. Kind of continuing on this theme around M&A, Andy, I know that Armanino has a concept called M&A ready that you talk to a lot of your clients about. Can you explain what that means and some of the strategies you're advising your clients to consider?
Sure. And we're just in the early stages of launching this with a couple of test customers, but we do have intent to roll it out more broadly. But I'm happy to talk to people that are interested in it, of course. But M&A ready, this notion, most companies don't go public. Of course, we know that. Some companies fail, but companies that are successful in their outcomes, usually, the likely scenario is they get sold or purchased by someone else, another company. And so if you're in the stage where you might have a need or desire, or one of the scenarios you want to plan for is an exit strategy, is an M&A transaction, getting bought by somebody, and you will want to think ahead of time. I suggest strongly, you want to think ahead of time about what are the things that I need to do to be ready for it. One of the things is the thing that Tim, you were just talking about, getting your numbers together, being able to use a tool like Ordway to just totally have every single number on the revenue side and the forecast and the plan, how you're going to grow in the future, what's your cost of acquisition, customer acquisition, how do you define that, and how have you been consistent across time with those measures and metrics. That's all critical, sure. But there's also stuff that you can do that seems, kind of goofy, like, other things that can cause holdbacks. So, I encourage those of you that are thinking, I'd like to be, thinking about being ready for an M&A transaction. Take the time to do it now, and don't spend a lot of money, but just do it over time. Spend the money, invest some money in that process, because the old engineering joke is you can have it good, fast, or cheap. Which two of the three do you want? And if you want it good and cheap, it's not going to be fast. So take your time, do it, a little bit every month, chunk away at it. And you can look at things that typically cause holdbacks. Like one of the things that causes holdbacks in the transactions is sales and use tax, because this whole what's the one in South Dakota versus I can't think of it.
Wayfair.
The Wayfair decision, right? That caused, thanks, Steve. That caused, it's something now that in every M&A transaction people go look at. And so why not just go and do your own investigation of that for whatever that costs and have that thing done? We've seen this for some of our clients where they do this work, and the holdback, which would normally be, $1 million or $2 million on the transaction, goes to zero. We did a thing, and there's also another thing where not just holdbacks go away, but experience from years ago. We thought the company I was in up in Seattle, Speakeasy, we thought was getting close to 100 million revenue, could not get it public. We thought we'd get purchased by somebody. We went through a process. But before we did that, for about a year and a half, we've been thinking, if we're going to get bought, it's probably going to be by a public company. We should have our Starbucks stuff ready. So over an 18-month period, we spent $300,000 in getting the Starbucks the whole processes documented and prepared and ready to be part of a public company. And we had, when Best Buy came in to buy Speakeasy, they said, they were very pleased that we had that, and they said, if you had not had that, we would have dinged you. But we were able to justify increasing the purchase price by $5 million because you had all this work done. We spent 300,000, so I'll take the 5 million on 300,000 investment return every single time. That was a fun one to have. After the fact, it was like I'm glad we did that. That was good.
I don't know. It sounds to me like you're saying that SOX compliance has a much better ROI than a lot of these new products that we launch.
I'd hate to say that. It did in the day. I'm not sure that's quite true anymore, but in that deal in that day, yeah, it would mattered a lot. But there's other things that are critical today in getting ready for M&A transactions and having all the numbers clean. It answers all the questions, being able to respond to those and being ready for that transaction. It's just that every dollar you spend on that is going to pay back for sure when you get to the transaction itself. And then some.
So Wayne, kind of continuing on this theme of being M&A ready, does it make sense to do an external audit if you haven't had a financial audit already? Like, is that one of the things that will help?
Yes, it depends on the ARR amount. I know that if you're under a certain dollar ARR, it may not make sense until you grow to a certain dollar amount. But once you hit that threshold, it's worthwhile to have an audit by an external firm. Reason for it is that you have potential investors. Once they sign the LOI, they're going to want to look at our financials, and they're digging deep. To kind of Tim's point, but to let investors know, hey, we had our financials externally audited. It gives some confidence to investors when they bring their own people in. Two, making sure that your financials are audited. It helps you make sure that your financials match your story. I've seen founders where they come up with numbers, but when the investors firm comes in and audit, it's a little bit different. Like, hey, what's going on? So just to have that kind of safety net, or like that kind of like audit to make sure that it's everything's like 1-to-1. It's huge. Another reason is for external firm to audit is, listen, we want to have an accurate 409A. You know, the once you have your financials audit well enough, you'll be able to have a much cleaner, more accurate 409A versus if you haven't done it. It's huge nowadays where you know, when we do a 409A and then you review your valuation, you're like, wait a second, something's not right here. But you know, having an audit financial will ease a lot of that concern, because they know that, hey, your valuation is based on, you know, economic conditions plus your historical financials. So I say if you hit a dollar threshold, definitely do it.